Good evening. It is time for the Iman Report. It is Sunday night, September 20th, and this was a good night for football. But unfortunately, too, this was the body bag day in the NFL. A lot of big injuries today to a lot of different teams. And I kind of am going to fault this to a lack of OTAs and lack of preseason. And I think today showed the importance of why we need a preseason and why we need OTAs. It might not prevented some of these injuries today, but I think it showed the importance of why we needed preseason. But otherwise, this was a very good night for football. Tonight on NBC, we had the Seattle Seahawks against the New England Patriots. Russell Wilson, 21 for 28, 288 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, 132.2 passer rating. Cam Newton, not bad himself, 30 for 44, 397 passing yards. A lot more dinking and dunking. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Julian Edelman looked like his old self tonight. 8 receptions, 179 receiving yards. But this was just high-scoring football, a shootout between the two. Nick Folk did miss a field goal tonight. But this was a classic Patriots-Seahawks game going to the wire. Unfortunately for Seattle, they lose Quentin Diggs to a helmet-to-helmet call. That was the right call. He gets disqualified from the game. That will likely get reviewed for a potential fine. But Seattle's defense, got the job done when it counted the most. But it came right down to the last possession like every other Seahawks and Patriots game. Seattle getting the stop. Seattle victorious. Seattle goes to 2-0. And Seattle next gets Dallas. And I like their chances of going 3-0, starting 4-0. Seattle, they played Dallas at home, then they go to Miami, then they get Minnesota. So schedule's fairly favorable for Seattle. Whereas for the Patriots, schedule's not exactly the easiest for the Patriots coming up. Next week's game should be okay for them. They go home, they play the Las Vegas Raiders. Then after that, they play the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. Then they play Denver at home. And then the 49ers, we'll find out a lot more about the 49ers in a moment when we talk about all the injuries they had today. Then Buffalo, so not exactly slouches are going to be going up against. So the road's a little tougher for the New England Patriots going ahead here. But these teams will definitely be in the playoffs like every year, and always just fun to see these two compete every 4 years. On the Thursday night game in the Battle of Ohio, the Cleveland Browns beat the Cincinnati Bengals 35-30. Joe Burrow throws for 3 touchdowns in this game, sacked 3 times. Baker Mayfield, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. The impression I got from this game is that Cleveland's defense is not good. They allowed Cincinnati to score 30 points. Cincinnati, not that great of a team as of yet. Cincinnati still rebuilding. But they did get the monsters going with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb running the football. Baker Mayfield looked like a much better quarterback in this game. But Cleveland has a lot of work to do. They do avoid 0-2. Cincinnati 0-2. This is a rebuild year. Expectations are a bit lower for Cincinnati. As for the Brownies, all Cleveland has to really do at this point is find a way to get to 8-8. 8-8 might just be good enough to get in the playoffs this year. Maybe look at acquiring from some decent defensive help before the trade deadline. I don't think Cleveland's actually that far off from being a wild card team if they can rattle off a few wins. Cincinnati probably looking more about a few years out from being a contender. But upcoming for Cleveland, they get the Washington football team. That could be good, that could be bad. You see how the defense, that could be a winnable game. Then they play Dallas, Indianapolis, we'll get to them later. So there's a path there to get 8 wins some way somehow for Cleveland. Baker Mayfield looking like a much better quarterback this week than the first week, where I kind of thought he was going to maybe get benched for Case Keenum. Not anymore. But we'll find out a lot more about Cleveland in week 3. In a game that was very close in Miami, that also had a weather delay due to lightning, the Buffalo Bills are victorious over the Miami Dolphins 31-28. It was the Josh Allen show today, 24 for 35, 417 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, a 147.0 rating. Ryan Fitzpatrick recovers a bit from that New England game, going 31 for 47, 328 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs had himself a coming out party against Miami today. 8 receptions, 153 yards. The Buffalo defense, though, just did not come out to Miami today. They made Ryan Fitzpatrick look half decent today. Buffalo now 2-0. Miami 0-2. This is probably one of those typical Miami games where the game was a lot closer than we thought. And for Buffalo, 2-0, that's good. Next week, they get the 2-0 LA Rams. We're going to find out a lot about these two teams next week when they face off in Buffalo. As for the Dolphins, Dolphins play Thursday night against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This could be a good opportunity for the Dolphins to get their first win. I don't think Dolphins are as bad as advertised here, and I think they could rattle off a win here. It might be their best chance for the Dolphins to get a win. Other than that, they're playing tough teams. The 49ers dominate the Jets at home. That's the good news. The bad news is the injuries were bad today for the Niners. They lose Raheem Mostert. They lose Raheem Mostert to a knee injury. That one is not too serious. But the 2 injuries, then Jimmy Garoppolo maybe going to miss 4 to 6 weeks with an ankle sprain. That means they're going to have to rely on Nick Mullins for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Luckily for the Niners, the schedule is pretty good. They're not going to face any big teams in the next 4 weeks. It's going to be mostly cupcakes. They're going to play next week the New York Giants, another team with injury issues. Then after that, Philadelphia, a team with a lot of issues. Then after that, they play Miami, a rebuilding team. But the one that could, where you hope Jimmy G is back, is when they play the LA Rams in 4 weeks on Sunday Night Football at Levi Stadium. That could be the game where you might have issues. But losing Jimmy G is not as important as losing both Solomon Thomas and Nick Bosa for the year with ACL tears. Now, all of a sudden, John Lynch is going to have to be active in signing some free agents this week, possibly bringing in Ziggy Ansah. Ziggy Ansah is a guy that John Lynch needs to sign ASAP. Also, you might have to work a trade to bring in some rentals on defense. But you need to hope guys like Richard Sherman come back. George Kittle needs to come back. Dee Ford needs to come back. The injuries are piling up for the Niners, and injuries is what could derail the Niners' chances at a revenge tour this season. So hopefully they can get some healthy bodies, and maybe John Lynch works out a trade or two, signs a free agent or two this week, and bolsters some depth. As for the Jets are looking like a team that needs to tear it down to the bolts. I think Adam Gase is a dead man walking in New York. Sam Darnold, I feel bad for the kid. I don't think he's going to have a prayer to keep his job in New York after this year. I think you ride out the string with Sam Darnold. Darnold will probably be a backup somewhere next season. Learn from an experienced quarterback. Maybe he will be the next Teddy Bridgewater or Ryan Tannehill, wherever he lands. But I just feel like I just don't think this was a good match made in heaven in New York. But Chris Johnson the Johnson family has to get things right in 2021 for the Jets, because there's a chance they could land Trevor Lawrence in next year's draft. And they do not want to. This is a kid that's a don't miss prospect. And he could be the best quarterback coming to the Jets since a guy named Joe Namath was with the Jets. And the Jets don't want to ruin the development of Trevor Lawrence if you can help it. And I think the Jets are going to be a team that needs to tear it down to the bolts after this year. And in another game with big injuries, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Denver Broncos 26-21. Unfortunately, the Broncos lose Drew Lock to a shoulder injury. Drew Lock likely to miss some significant time with the Broncos due to that injury. Jeff Driscoll did okay in reliefs. 18th for 34, 256 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. But was sacked 6 times. Now Denver's going to have to go and sign a quarterback this week. Possibly Josh Rosen's out there. You've got Colin Kaepernick. It wouldn't hurt to give Colin Kaepernick a job. I'm just saying. There's also Blake Bortles who needs a job, so they definitely need to look at some reinforcements at backup quarterback. But Denver's defense kept them in the game for what it's worth. I still think Denver has a path to the playoffs at 0-2. It's just the schedule hasn't fallen in their favor. And it doesn't exactly get any easier for the Broncos next week as Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to come to town. So, yeah, they could go 0-3 before they get a cupcake against the Jets. But I don't think the Broncos might be actually one of the better 0-2 teams we're talking about here. Hopefully, Drew Lock's not out a lot of time. Hopefully, we can get Jerry Jeudy going for the Broncos soon. Cortland Sutton was good. Noah Fant with a touchdown. Melvin Gordon with a touchdown. But as for Pittsburgh, Big Ben had a good game for what it's worth. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 29 for 41, 311 passing yards. James Conner, 100 rushing yards, 16 carries. Then Chase Claypool and Dante Johnson, good with the football. So Pittsburgh's looking like a team that might be getting it back on track. We'll see if they can get to 3-0 next week. Maybe Pittsburgh is better than what I thought. Time will tell. And one of the more bigger snoozers of today, the Indianapolis Colts beat the Minnesota Vikings 28-11. Phillip Rivers 19 for 25. But the bigger thing is, at 0-2, the Vikings defense looks terrible. They allow Phillip Rivers throw for 19 for 25, 214 passing yards. Jonathan Taylor, 101 rushing yards. Not exactly a great game for the defense there. And then Kirk Cousins, probably one of his worst games as a Viking, 11 for 26, 113 passing yards, 3 interceptions, sacked 3 times, a passer rating of a minuscule 15.9 passer rating. Not exactly good day for Kirk Cousins. At 0-2, the Vikings are in trouble. And they need to find an identity soon. Justin Jefferson. Dalvin Cook was nowhere to be seen. Dalvin Cook, 63 rushing yards. Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson not cutting it. We don't know how bad this defense is. But the Vikings at 0-2, this team has problems. Now they play the Tennessee Titans, not an easy task. There's a good chance the Vikings could start 0-3, 0-4, 0-5. They could start somewhere between 0-4 and 0-5, which could cause big problems in Minnesota. And you got to point at Rick Spielman for not wanting to pay players. I think Rick Spielman should get the blame, not Mike Zimmer. Zimmer could get scapegoated after this year, too. That is a real possibility. But this is not a good Minnesota team. The schedule not exactly favoring Minnesota in the next 3 weeks as they get Tennessee, Houston, Seattle. Maybe Atlanta could be their first win there, but if not there, they could 0-5, 0-6, 0-7. This is not a good Minnesota team. And this team needs to find a way to find a win somewhere. They need to do some soul searching. As for Indianapolis, this was a good bounce-back win after losing to a Jaguars team that might be better than what I thought thus far. And for the Colts, the schedule's pretty favorable for them to rattle off some wins here. They get the Jets, the Bears, the Browns, the Bengals, the Lions, before playing the Ravens. So the schedule favors the Colts to maybe get on a bit of a run. Maybe Rivers is not finished as an NFL quarterback just yet. But I'll say one thing. The Colts were able to run the football with Jonathan Taylor today. That is a good sign. And Mo Alley Cox was pretty good receiving the football today. In a game that I thought that was much closer than I thought it would be, the Tennessee Titans beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 33-30. Jaguars now 1-1. The Titans 2-0. Titans defense kind of went AWOL today. Derrick Henry didn't have the greatest of games today, but Ryan Tannehill was able to win the game using his arm today, throwing for 4 touchdowns with a 145.7 passer rating. Gardner Minshew, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 30 for 45. Gardner Minshew has not looked terrible in the 2 games this year. So maybe maybe I was wrong about Gardner Minshew. James Robinson rushing for over 100 yards today. So maybe Minshew can be the face of the franchise in Jacksonville. Maybe Shad Khan saw something in them that I didn't. But credit to them for keeping it close against Tennessee. Stephen Gostkowski getting back on track after a bad week last week kicking field goals. So this was a much better game for Gostkowski. Titans 2-0. Now they get Minnesota before a big game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we're going to find out probably in a couple weeks how good this Titans team is as they play the Steelers and the Bills and the Texans. So we're going to find out how good this team really is, and I think they're at least good enough to win the AFC South at this rate. In a game where Atlanta blows a big lead in the first half to Dallas, loses 40-39. And Dak Prescott first was playing. Prescott played horrible in the first half, came back and played a much better second half. 34 for 47, 450 passing yards. Atlanta has a good passing game, 126.3 passer rating out of Matt Ryan, 24 for 36 out of Ryan. Atlanta's pass offense is great. The defense is terrible. That falls on Dan Quinn. CeeDee Lamb comes out and gets 106 receiving yards. Amari Cooper, 100 receiving yards. They made an average quarterback look elite for one game. Atlanta's got a great offense, but the defense is terrible. And the defense is the liability for the Falcons right now. Same thing with Dallas. I thought Dallas would have a much better defense this year, and at 1-1. Yes, Dallas did get the win today, but the defense is a big concern, especially now that they got to go to Seattle next week and play Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. Dallas could be in for a long day if all things go wrong for Dallas. And I think, honestly, Dallas could be a 9-7, 8-8 team now and still win the East. NFC East has problems, but I think Dallas might still win the East with a 9-7, 8-8 record at this rate. In Philadelphia, the Los Angeles Rams clobber the Philadelphia Eagles 37-19. Jared Goff 24-27, 267 passing yards. Darrell Henderson running for 81 yards today. Carson and the Eagles defense was nowhere to be seen today. They allowed 37 points from the LA Rams. The Eagles defense is in big trouble at 0-2. And I do think it's time for Jim Schwartz to start worrying about his job at this rate. And the Eagles, if the Eagles can't get a win over the Cincinnati Bengals next week, then it is time to maybe make a change at defense. It might be time to get rid of Jim Schwartz at defensive coordinator. But the problems are not just with the Eagles defense. Carson Wentz has not been sharp in the first two games of the year. Today, Wentz 26 for 33, 242 passing yards. Picked off twice, 56.6 passer rating. That's got to get better. He's got to try to get Zach Ertz involved in the game. It can't be Miles Sanders. He's got to try to get Deshaun Jackson involved in the game. Ertz only receiving 42 yards. That's got to change. You got to get Ertz, got to feed Zach Ertz the ball to win. Try to get Deshaun Jackson, get your playmakers involved if you can. But Wentz has to get over these early season struggles. And if that's not the case, you're going to have to. And part of it might be just Wentz has looked frazzled. I think Wentz is frazzled from all the injuries he's had to weather, and the injuries might be catching up to Carson Wentz. Maybe add a few wrinkles with Jalen Hurts. It may not hurt to get Jalen Hurts running the football, so you can add an extra wrinkle to the offense. That's what maybe Doug Peterson needs to do in week 3. But if Philly cannot get past the Bengals, it is time to start Jim Schwartz should be on the hot seat already. Also, Howie Roseman needs to take some responsibility for what if the season goes off the rails in Philadelphia. In another game that had a big injury today, the Chicago Bears beat the New York Giants 17-13. Daniel Jones sacked 4 times in this game, threw 1 interception, threw for 240 yards. Mitch Trubisky, 18 for 28, 190 passing yards. But the good part is Patterson and Montgomery were able to run the football. So Chicago being able to run the ball is what has gotten them to win thus far. They played some okay defense as of right now. But the defense is going to have to get better against the Atlanta Falcons next week. But the bad news is they lose Saquon Barkley to an ACL tear. Barkley's season is done for the year. Also could hurt his contract negotiations in the offseason. New York could have to look to sign Devontae Freeman this week to be the primary running back. Dion Lewis and Sterling Shepard are not going to get the job done at running back. At 0-2, I think the New York Giants are poised at this point at another high draft pick. Yes, Chicago did get the win at 2-0, but whether or not they are a playoff team is another question. They will play Atlanta, which could expose them as frauds. Atlanta's probably going to come in hungry for a win next week. And then you get Indianapolis, you get Tampa Bay, Carolina, LA, and then the Saints. So we're going to find out a lot more about this Bears team in another few weeks and see if Trubisky can stay half decent or not. In Lambeau Field in Green Bay today, the Packers dominate the Lions 42-21. Aaron Rodgers, 18 for 30, 240 passing yards. Throws for 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones had a day running the football in Green Bay. Aaron Jones runs for 168 rushing yards, scores 2 touchdowns. Marquez Valdez Scantling scores but Devontae Adams, they lose Devontae Adams to injury in this game. Not good. But today it was all about the defense too. Christian Kirksey, 12 tackles in the game. And I think Green Bay is in good shape. We're going to find out a lot about the Green Bay, about how good Aaron Rodgers is next week when they play the Saints. The Saints have a much better defense than the Bears and the Lions combined. Detroit 0-2. Detroit is in big trouble. They could easily start the year 0-4, go into the bye week. I think Matt Patricia could be 2 games away from being fired, along with Bob Quinn. Sheila Ford should pull the trigger if the Lions are 0-4 going into the bye week. Detroit's not a good team. I think it's time for Detroit to change the culture in 2021, even if it means trading Matthew Stafford to a contender. It might be time for the Lions to face reality, tear this team down to the bolts, and start over in 2021. This Lions team should have never fired Jim Caldwell. Caldwell was the glue that held the Lions together. And Matthew Stafford at this point deserves to play for a contender. In Tampa Bay, Tom Brady gets his first win as a Buccaneer, beating the Carolina Panthers 31-17. Leonard Fournette was able to run the football today for over 103 yards. That's good. 2 touchdowns. Tom Brady got the win. But one touchdown, 1 interception. Brady able to find Mike Evans today for 104 receiving yards, a touchdown. Brady effective as a game manager today. Teddy Bridgewater, good game for him. Good game stats-wise, but threw 2 interceptions, sacked 5 times. But the bad news is they lose Christian McCaffrey to an injury for the year. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey out with an ankle injury. We'll see how long McCaffrey's out. But it doesn't look like it's an ACL. That's the good news. But DJ Moore had a good game catching the football. Robbie Anderson, 109 receiving yards. Panthers may not get a lot of wins this year, but they're going to hang in tough there. Next up for the Panthers is the LA Chargers. We'll get to the Chargers in a moment, but this might be an opportunity for them to get a win. But as for Tampa Bay, they get back on track. They are 1-1. They will play the Denver Broncos next week and then play the Los Angeles Chargers. In the afternoon games today, the Arizona Cardinals beat the Washington football team 30-15. Kyler Murray, 26 for 38, 286 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Was sacked 3 times in this game. Kenyon Drake rushes for 86 yards. Kyler Murray, using his legs, rushes for 2 touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins had a lot more of a quiet game today, but he did have a touchdown. My take is I think Washington's got a good defense. Dwayne Haskins sacked 4 times in this game. So Arizona's defense is looking a lot better this year than they were last year. And Arizona is poised to maybe get 5-0, 6-0. This Arizona Cardinals team is definitely a team that looks like they are a playoff team this year. Washington may not be a playoff team this year, but they are better than what they were, and that's Ron Rivera changing the culture in DC. I think Washington's going to be able to rattle off a few more wins than I thought. They go to Cleveland. That could be a game that might be a winnable game for Washington. We shall see. 2-0 is good for the Cardinals at this point. In Houston, the Texans fall to 0-2 as they lose to the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson sacked 4 times in this game. That's throws for a touchdown, 18 for 24. But was able to run for 54 yards. Gus Edwards able to run the football. Deshaun Watson, 25 for 36, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 4 sacks. As for the Texans, they are in trouble at 0-2. And they get one more tough team before they might go 0-3 before they get their first win, which will likely be against Minnesota. I don't think the Texans are a contender, but they will make the wild card. I think the Texans will at least be a wild card team this year, but this is maybe might be the end of the line for Bill O'Brien as head coach in Houston at this rate. In LA in a thriller today, the Chiefs beat the LA Chargers 23-20. Against the Chargers defense, that was game against Patrick Mahomes today. Mahomes throwing for 2 touchdowns today. Sacked once, 90.9 passer rating. And the run game was actually silenced today by the Chargers defense. If there's one thing is that the Chargers have an elite defense. Austin Eckler almost able to run for 100 yards over the Chiefs defense today. Justin Herbert having an excellent debut today, 22 for 33, 311 passing yards. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Herbert is the future in LA. I don't think they should go back to Tyrod Taylor. Keep running with Herbert. I think if the Chargers roll with Herbert, they're going to rattle off some wins at some point. And who knows? That AFC wild card is going to be so wide open this year with 7 teams making the playoffs. I don't think the answer is Tyrod Taylor. The answer is Justin Herbert. Try to get some wins with Herbert. But if we see a lot of what we saw today out of Justin Herbert, the future is bright for the Chargers. And for the Chargers, the schedule might favor them if they go with Herbert. Well, maybe not. They get the Panthers and the Buccaneers and the Saints. But after the Saints, the schedule gets a lot easier. You get the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Jaguars. So there are some winnable games if they get Herbert some experience. Herbert looks like a quarterback that is the face of the future. Don't go back to Tyrod Taylor. So I think we'll see what the Chargers do, and don't be stubborn. Stick with Herbert. But this is the week 2 of what was like a body bag week of the NFL. We'll be back Wednesday night for the week 3 picks for the Iman Report. Everybody have a good Sunday night. Have a good week. Iman out.